Hi! Last week I went through with you how to work the knit stitch. This week we will go through how to work the purl stitch. The purl stitch is the opposite of the knit stitch really. When you work one row knit and one row purl, you end up with this. This is the knit side and this is the purl side. It will all make sense as we go through it. I will go through how to work the purl stitch, and then after that we'll go through the differences between the knit and the purl and when to use each. I've cast on 10 stitches and I've just worked a few rows. I'm ready to work the purl stitch. If you watched last week's video, you'll know that I have a little rhyme to work the knit stitch. I didn't have one for the purl stitch, but I managed to find one and hopefully it will help you. Otherwise, just watch the video and ignore the rhyme. So with our working needle, we put it around the back of the yarn. When we were knitting, we had the yarn at the back. We're now having the needle at the back and the yarn at the front. And we go down through the bunny hole, around the big tree. So in between those two needles again. Up pops the bunny and off goes she. So we're going down in front of all the work. So the working needle goes through and stays at the front. And then our yarn goes around from back to front of the working needle here. So it sits in between those two needles. And then again, this is the bit where I will support this stitch with my index finger, just so it doesn't pop off the needle as I pop the stitch up, and then just knock it off the needle. So it's down through the bunny hole, around the big tree. Up pops the bunny, and off goes she. So it's finished working a row of purl stitches. What I have been working on the next row is knit stitches. When you alternate your rows like this, you end up with stocking stitch, which is the typical stitch you will recognise in knitting. So this is stocking stitch. All the V's are the knit stitches and all the little bumps are the purl stitches. I kind of remember it because, you know, the V's kind of look like the sharp V shape on a K, and then you've got the round bits on a P. Random way to remember it, but it works for me. I spoke last week about how if we knit every single row, we end up with something called garter stitch. So this one was knitting every single row, and it gets this lovely bumpy effect, and it's the same on the back. This is if we purl every row. It's exactly the same fabric you end up with, just because the purl is the exact opposite of the knit stitch. Exactly the same on either side. Another time when you can vary your stitches is if you are using rib, which is what you would usually see on the cuff of a sleeve or maybe on the top of a sock. We'll go through now how to work the rib. I've worked a few rows here of knit 2 purl 2 rib. So that's where you knit 2 stitches and then purl 2 stitches. So we've got our knit and our purl. And if you're not sure which one you're about to work, you can always look just below at the stitch. So I've got little V's below this one, so I know I'm starting with knit. So if I knit 2, and then when you come to work your purl 2, or purl however many, bring the yarn in between your needles to the front of the work. so that it's in the working position for the purl stitch. And you can see this is a purl stitch because it's got its little bump just below the stitch. So we've got the little bump for 2, and then we've got V's for 2 there. So around the tree. And then again, when we get to our knit stitches that we're about to work, we need to take this yarn in between the needles and around the back. And then we can work the knit stitches. And when you come to work on the reverse side, where you have finished with knit 2 on this side, you will then start with purl 2 on this side. So it is the exact opposite. I hope you have found this video helpful. I won't be posting for the next month. My grandma passed away this week, and yes, 25 years ago she taught me all this, and I'm just going to take a month to be with family and just take a wee bit of time for me. But I will be back with more videos and more tutorials. Let me know if there is anything you would like to see, and I will see you again next month.